There's only one direction this can go as we watch the Greek crisis becoming a global crisis. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Recently, I did a video about how Russia apparently was considering lending some money to Greece should they need it. Well, here they are now out of this Greek news agency. Tsipras and Putin agreed to boost bilateral cooperation. So the new prime minister and Putin agreed to boost bilateral ties in a telephone conversation where he invited him over to Moscow, and the two men agreed to boost cooperation in the economy and energy, tourism, culture, and transport sectors. So we don't know the full details of exactly what has happened here, but regardless, Russia has stuck out its hand in order to support the Greeks. This is exactly what I said would happen, and here they are. So this will be very interesting to see the geopolitical effects of this. We're going to move on to a connected article. This individual, this economist, he's the director of the Center for European Policy Studies in Brussels. Check out what he said. One way Greece can keep its banks alive: impose capital controls. Can't believe I'm reading this, but here they are. An outflow of deposits from Greek banks will put pressure on the government to limit how much money people can withdraw or transfer outside the country as the EU nations lose patience with providing a lifeline. And that's what you do. When you're pushed to the edge, you simply tighten the noose. Imposing capital controls, as Cyprus did 2 years ago when its banks faced a crisis, would buy time for the new prime minister to negotiate the debt relief, according to this director here. So what are they suggesting? They're going to go ahead and do what they did in Cyprus. Well, if I remember correctly, they had something called a bail-in. Now, this bail-in put a stranglehold around these people because not only did they steal their wealth, they called a bank holiday at the same time. As soon as they were able to get some of their money out, well, what happened? They were only able to get out a small percentage at a certain allotted period of time. And this is what concerns me very much, not about Cyprus, not about Greece, but how this extends out into other countries. Look at the US, for example, how they're starting to begin minor capital controls. And then we have people who laugh it off, but understand that this has happened multiple times in US history alone. So this is something that could very well happen again. We already seen the signs of it happening again. So who's to say it couldn't be done in full force, full effect? They said it was nothing when it happened in Cyprus. Oh, it's such a small country, it means nothing. Now it's happening in Greece, or we'll see if it does. And then it could just continue on one at a time. This is out of Bloomberg, talking about this taxi driver that's overhearing where people are putting their money in these tough times. The withdrawals from the Greek banks may have exceeded $17 billion in the run-up to the elections. So here he is saying one passenger told someone on his phone that he withdrew 25,000 euros, took it home, worked out a loose tile in the bathroom, and stashed the money there. Another one buried it in the garden, and another one putting it in his air conditioning unit. And there's all sorts of things that they're doing. But the fact remains is that they're worried about the bank runs, and they very well should be, because it looks like it could happen. You already have such a large amount of money being pulled out, and if the ECB is not going to be there to pick up the pieces, then they're in big trouble. But of course, all they'll need to do is create the capital controls, call a bank holiday, and that will solve the problem. Let's go on to this. Now we have how it extends out into the global economy. China's Dagong rating agency, the head said this: I believe we'll have to face a new world financial crisis in the next few years. It's difficult to give an exact time, but all the signs are present, such as the growing volumes of debt and the unsteady developments of the economies in the US, EU, and China, and some other developing nations. It's even worse ahead than 2008. And that is exactly what I have been saying here over and over and over and over again. You've heard the broken record playing here at the Money GPS, but it just goes to show you how many different indicators we can look at that show all heading downward. Look at this indicator, the death cross of American society. And as we compare the US labor force participation rate, that's the blue line, and then the US bonds and stocks, essentially, on the that orange line there. And basically what it's showing us is that we have a maximum amount of disparity that has been growing, and this is ever since the financial crisis, where you have central banks printing up the money, sending the stocks up. At the same time, you have less and less people that are employed. I'll get to that later on in this video here. I'm just going to show you the US in the statistics, the U3 versus the U6. So we have the standard number that they output there, which continues to go down, and that is the U3. These numbers are outdated. This is from my book here, but essentially showing you the exact same thing. Whereas we have a disparity with the U6 curve, and that is the underemployed. So individuals who have not been able to get work, for example, for the period of 1 year, they're simply wiped off of those statistics. And then you also have people who are receiving part-time employment when they actually need full-time employment. When you factor those in, there is many percent increase on the unemployment rate. But of course, the government is not going to output that data, even though this is actually available at the BLS. You can actually see these stats for yourself. But of course, they themselves are fraudulent. And we'll move on right here to this: world growth in oil, energy, and GDP. Look how well connected they are. And that's a very frightening thought when you see what's happening with oil and where we could expect the market to head. That is very frightening, because oil dropped, even though it has come up from its bottom. You have to think about where it was, well over $100 a barrel, and it dropped less than halfway down. So this is very significant. One other indicator that we can use here, historical, this goes back to 1972, and you could see it's practically even here, how they all sort of react together, give or take. So this is a very interesting one to look at. And this is something that I've brought up probably 10,000 times here. The debt is too high for either austerity or growth to cure. This article happens to be out of Bloomberg. A bunch of things here that are actually good to check out if you're interested. Essentially, you can look at it for yourself. Just wanted to show you how often we have to look at this type of data, that yes, obviously putting a stranglehold on the economy doesn't fix it. Look at what happened in Greece. It didn't work. And that's what they tried to do in other countries as well, particularly in Europe. And then they tried growth. Well, it's not real growth, right? It's not actual getting people working again. It's simply printing up money or taking money from the taxpayers and bailing out banks. That type of growth, as they call it, that doesn't work either. So of course, this is obviously going to be a problem in the future. Look at what the Gallup CEO said. The number of full-time jobs, and that's what everybody wants, as a percentage of the total population is the lowest it's ever been. It is the absolute lowest it's ever been. I can't believe I'm reading that. In the recession, we lost 13 million jobs. Only 3 million have come back. You don't see that in the number that they provide us with. And that's obvious when you just look at a few statistics. It's pretty simple to realize, and he is telling the truth right here. The unemployment rate is fake. It's false. Look at the unemployment rates in Europe. Look at it in Greece, how bad the situation is, when essentially about half of the youth are unemployed. And then you go out into countries like Spain and Italy and others where we have a very, very similar situation. I warned about it in my book. I've been warning about it on the channel, and I hope that you will take to these warnings. And this right here is just wanted to show you how we put too much faith in our governments, in the bankers, and take a look at what they said. These are the ex-lawmakers who could barely wait to sell out. 5 House members and 2 senators who left office in January are already working for lobbying firms that make millions peddling influence on Capitol Hill. This goes to show you how criminal they are. They just continue to go back and forth in the revolving door that makes this worse every single day. And this is just another thing that we need to watch. We need to see where these individuals are going, where are they heading, and understand that the governments, they don't work for us. They work for themselves, and they work for their puppet masters. If you found this video informative, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. And don't forget to become a subscriber on The Insiders. The Insiders is where I give out all my best intel for free. That is available at themoneygps.com. You just scroll down to the bottom, fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with good, short, concise info.